As calls grow for accountability for Wednesday's insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, NBC News has learned that the FBI and Washington, D.C.'s Metropolitan Police Department are conducting a federal investigation into the tragic death overnight of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, one of at least 60 officers who suffered injuries amid the clash between the pro-Trump mob and law enforcement. He's the fifth person to die. Prosecutors also announcing charges from the riots. Richard Barnett is one, seen here with his feet on a desk in Nancy Pelosi's office. He was arrested and charged this afternoon in Arkansas with entering and remaining on restricted grounds, violent entry, and theft of public property. He's one of only a few dozen arrested now. 48 hours later, 13 have now been charged in federal court. Though obviously, for all of us watching, it was thousands and thousands who stormed the Capitol. Joining our conversation, Democratic Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney of New York. Congressman, I wonder first if I can get your reaction on this article of impeachment against Donald Trump, and I'll just read a little bit more from it.
Before they go any further, I just want to say that the Speaker of the House has made an announcement of dropping the flag to have staff in honor of one of their own who I think got hit in the head, the way I understand, with a fire extinguisher. And he wound up going home, and I guess the injury was so bad that probably had an aneurysm, and he wound up dying. It's really sad because in total, there was one woman that got shot inside the Capitol building that was an ex-veteran, and 2 or 3 other people that just had an incident outside the grounds to the point that they either had a massive heart attack or stroke. I don't know if they got too hot or if maybe the crowd was pushing and shoving too much and they just over-exhilarated themselves to the point. Anyways, give or take, there's been 4 or 5 deaths out of this. So whenever somebody looks at this and says, oh, that ain't no big deal, it's just a bunch of unruly people acting up a little bit. No, it is a big deal, especially whenever you're talking about violating one of our sacred temples that supports and justifies who we are to begin with as far as a free, fair, open democracy. Yes, it is a big deal. This building has not been sieged upon or attacked for over 200 years, since I believe 1812 is whenever they broke in and burnt the White House down, and the British done this in retaliation towards the 1775 or 76 war. We ain't seen nothing ever like this before. And I just want you to listen to this particular senator, I believe he's a senator, listen to his testimony and take in what you would have been thinking if you was in his shoes at this particular time whenever these events was unfolding outside while they was pinned up, trapped, being hunted, stalked like a bunch of animals. Please listen to this.
It says that Donald Trump engaged in high crimes and misdemeanors by willfully inciting violence against the government of the United States. Also says that President Trump gravely endangered the security of the United States and its institutions of government. Your thoughts?
That's exactly right. And it's not just Donald Trump. Remember, this is about an incendiary lie that we stole the election. And that incendiary lie is the blood libel. It is the fuse they lit that caused this violence. And it is not just the president. It is the Republicans on the Hill who are perpetuating the lie that the election was stolen, who even after the riot and the murder of Officer Sicknick, and our hearts are broken and go out to his family, even after that, they attempted to set aside the results of the Electoral College. And it is all of those Republicans who need to be held accountable And every one of those protesters needs to be held accountable and arrested and prosecuted. The president, however, is the originator of this lie. He is the most accountable person. He needs to be removed from office by the 25th Amendment, by impeachment. He needs to be boxed in until then and until we have a new president. So we need to box him to protect our people and our Constitution. And then we need to remove him, if not before the 20th, on the 20th. And then we need to hold him and all of his enablers accountable.
Congressman, you've left me so much to unpack, starting with blood libel, but I want to just deal with one other thing that's in the news and then come back to that. On Thursday, multiple news organizations reported that Donald Trump wasn't functioning at the top of the military chain of command, that the call to have the National Guard come to aid law enforcement was approved by Mike Pence, who was at the Capitol. You've also got reporting today in Axios that White House aides plan to ignore his orders. You've got the Dear Colleague letter from Speaker Pelosi saying that after a conversation with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, she's been reassured that Donald Trump is not able to launch a nuclear strike. If he's not functioning as the country's commander-in-chief, what is he doing there?
Well, nothing good. And that's why he needs to be removed immediately. We all take comfort in knowing that our professional military officers should and will refuse unlawful orders. One of the attractions of the 25th Amendment is that it carries with it the possibility of immediately installing Vice President Pence as the acting president. And the Republicans in the cabinet and on the Hill need to be answering why they continue to support President Trump acting with the authorities of commander-in-chief. I don't want to find out that there are other flaws in the system, the way we found out on Wednesday when we were watching innocent people run for their lives. This is too serious now. This is a threat to our very constitutional system. We need to protect our country by boxing this president in until he is removed, and it needs to happen immediately.
A former Pentagon official said to me this week that, because of the way the rioters were treated, and I know that there'll be an investigation to understand why it was that they stood around. It looked like they were standing at a tailgate. I mean, nobody looked afraid. Like a normal burglar covers their face with a ski mask. No one was covering their faces. No one was hiding from cameras. They were waving flags for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours. That because of the way they were treated, they will simply take that act and move on potentially to other targets, state capitals, and otherwise. Are we doing enough to protect other people who may be targeted by Trump's mob?
No, and I was on a call today with a half a dozen members of Congress who were taking a bunch of grief from MAGA hat wearing people on airplanes who were not wearing masks, who were congratulating themselves on the storming of the Capitol. There are people who are going to be identified from social media, from those videos. They need to be arrested and held accountable. And we need to puncture immediately any self-congratulatory notion that what happened was some sort of victory. I take some comfort in the fact that we gained control of the United States Senate and counted out 306 electoral college votes for Joe Biden in the same 24-hour period that this insurrection occurred in. So we're winning the larger war here, but we need to make absolutely clear that there are consequences. Every Republican needs to stand up and be counted or held accountable. It is a choice. You are with that mob and with that violent crowd that killed a Capitol police officer on Wednesday, or you are with our Constitution. There's no middle ground, right? Every Republican needs to choose. And one more point.
Please.
If there is evidence that the president or his officials delayed the arrival of National Guard backup at the Capitol for the 2 hours when friends of mine were hiding in their offices, calling their husbands, telling them they might not see them again. One young woman told me a story. She's got 2 little kids. She called her husband and said, this might be it. And he was evacuating the House floor with me, and he said, I don't know what to tell you. And I'm telling you, if the National Guard was held back, then it's not enough to remove these people. They need to go to jail.
I picked up on a report a while ago from the news that had done some sort of a survey, even 48 hours after this occurrence has taken place, that over 50% of Trump loyalists, this is how sick this is, over 50% of Donald Trump's base, his loyalists, believes that the insurrection was deemed credible and just, and they support it 100%. If that gives you a mind's eye, if that gives you any ideal towards the monster that we're dealing with here, we're not just dealing with a few thousand people. We're not just dealing with a few people that originally done this, that probably thinks that they done something big and heroic, and they done something historic to the point that they can go around hitting their chest like a bunch of wild apes, like they accomplished something. We're dealing with a whole society over here in America that is just on the edge of the fringes of fixing to do the exact same thing because they themselves feels like that they have justified their cause. They themselves feel like that this is a justifiable cause. That tells you the poison that has been spewed into the American people's lives, into the American people's hearts, to the point that 48 hours after the fact, people that has watched the videos, listened to the testimonies, listened to the very thing that I'm showing you right now, are still in cahoots towards supporting what occurred Wednesday to our sacred temple pertaining to the Capitol building that supports and represents everything about our democracy. It is the most saddest, horrendous, heartbreaking, earth-shattering, gut-wrenching thing that I think that I've ever heard of in my entire life at the age of 59. Please listen to the rest of this man's testimony. If this won't make your hair curl as you're listening and watching this, then obviously you're one of the 50% of the Trump loyalist that is still under some sort of a dark, demented delusion that this was justifiable. Please watch. Please listen.
In that vein, a congresswoman said to me that she had called her husband Tuesday night to tell him where, Congresswoman Linda Sanchez from California, to tell her husband where her will was in case she died at work, the Capitol, where you work also, the next day. If she knew, let me ask you, did you know that Wednesday could be dangerous? Did you have any concerns for your safety?
Well, look, Nicole, I was in the House chamber, and I was 20 feet away from those windows they were breaking out in the center aisle. So I felt good to be sitting next to Colin Allred, who's a former Tennessee Titan and 6'1" and pretty big guy. But it was unclear for a moment there whether we were going to be in a physical confrontation with these protesters. There's a video right now on the website that the fast action of the staff who barricaded one of the doors to the speaker's lobby, which is behind the podium where the president gives the inaugural address. The protesters would have surrounded the House floor, and they would have had 80 members of Congress held hostage. Think about that. That video right there that you're showing, that's the door to the speaker's lobby. Look what's happening. If you look through those glass doors, I was 50 feet down that hallway with about 70 members of Congress getting out of the one exit left. And those officers right there, that's my group right there. That's Jim McGovern. Those are some of the House staffers who barricaded that door and delayed the entrance of these protesters, who would have had dozens of U.S. members of Congress and innocent staff people held hostage.
Right there's the group that he's talking about right there. In other words, if they would have went ahead and ushered on in, it would have been wall to wall with, I guess, a knockdown drag out to minimize the very least of what would have occurred. Who knows if they had shanks, if they had explosive devices, if they had ill will intent. I'm pretty sure that it would have been not a lot more than just a knockdown, drag out pertaining to a fist fight. I'm pretty sure that there would have been death and carnage that would have been untold. This whole thing, as far as I'm concerned, the hand of God was upon these people, because this whole thing could have unveiled itself to the point of being 1,000 million times worse than what we're actually seeing and experiencing on TV pertaining to 1 or 5 individuals that died during this event. This whole thing, as far as I'm concerned, these people should get down on their knees and they should thank their lucky stars. They should thank God, because the angels of God was holding this group back and preventing them from coming in there and basically massacring them. They could have been like sheep led to the slaughter. And the fact of the matter is, the United States Armed Forces pertaining to National Guard was purposely put on the back burner. They asked the Capitol Police, can y'all handle this? And I don't know if it was out of pride. I don't know if it was out of inexperience. I don't know if it was out of arrogance. But somebody said, we got this. We got this. Yeah, right? You got it. Okay. Well, Wednesday, there was probably 100,000 people out on the streets. These people went from the Capitol all the way back past the reflection pool, to give you any kind of idea towards how many people that it was. I mean, the people was like ants that had come out on Donald Trump's retaliation rally. I'm going to call it a retaliation rally, because he was retaliating, because he was like a spoiled child, because he didn't get pampered. He didn't get his way. So because of it, he revved up the people. A rebel riser. This is why they call a rebel riser a rebel riser. Those people that's breaking out those windows, they're doing that with their fist. It takes a great deal of pressure to break out those type of glasses, because those ain't just regular glasses like you put in a house. Those are commercialized glasses. Those glasses are probably, I'm going to say, every bit of 5/8 thick, maybe 1/3 to 1/4 thick. They're thicker than regular glass because they're in a commercialized door, a door that has to be opened and shut several hundred, maybe several thousand times a day. These doors, their hinges are built twice, probably 3 times, maybe 5 times stronger than on a normal door. The doors themselves are built out of